All right, everybody, welcome to AM Sports, Alex and Martin vodcast. So, filming a live episode right now. So, hopefully, we'll get some more viewers in. So, in this live vodcast actually. So, we're going to be talking some UFC. There's a lot going on in UFC. Alex was able to attend the recent UFC fight night with his press credentials. So, he had all types of access and got some firsthand knowledge. We're also going to talk about Conor McGregor, who dropped a big bombshell of announcement today, and of course, we'll finally talk about the upcoming UFC fights. Was it 197 this weekend? Yeah.
Yep, 197. I think that's MGM.
Yeah.
We have John Jones versus OSP. Ovens Saint-Preux.
Yeah, I want to talk about the UFC fight night. We'll talk about the Rashad Evans fight, of course, because I think, and you've actually met Rashad Evans, and so, yeah, man, what do you think how is he going? What's going through his mind right now?
Let me put it to you this way. I actually, round about the time that, it was exactly the time that he was walking backstage after his loss. I was actually on my way into the post-fight press conference room, and so I actually got to see him before the doctor got to see him backstage, and just looking at his demeanor, I mean, he was pissed.
Yeah.
Obviously, you go through your camp, you get knocked out early in the first round, and it's like all that work went for nothing. When it comes down to it, you look at his career, he obviously doesn't have anything to prove. He's a former champion. He's fought and beat some of the best that there's ever been. So when it comes down to it, he doesn't need to keep fighting. It's something that's obviously always hard for an athlete to do, somebody who's been athletic their entire life, been in competition their entire life in some way, shape, or form. It's hard to let it go, to hang up the gloves. And to be knocked out early in the first round by a guy like Glover Teixeira, somebody that you know going into this, he has some very heavy hands. You know he's going to strike hard. If you get caught, then it's going to hurt. So, to me, it's sort of like, in my opinion, the Conor McGregor-Jose Aldo fight. We didn't see a fight. We saw one punch. So we really don't. To me, that's not the thing that answers questions. So to me, Glover Teixeira knocking out Rashad does not necessarily indicate that Rashad wasn't ready for this fight, that he had a problem getting ready for this fight, that he had any sort of issues once he got into the cage. The big thing was just the fact that he got caught, and he wasn't able to take the punishment of those couple hits. So I don't necessarily think that the result is necessarily telling. Is he at the end of his career? Absolutely. His prime is definitely behind him. So I think there's a chance we might see one or two more, but I also think there's an equal chance that he could be retiring. I just think it's too early to tell at this moment.
We'll go back to speaking of retirement, since you mentioned that, we can go back to the UFC Fight Night here in a little bit. You talked about Rashad Evans being kind of at the end of his time. What did you think about the Conor McGregor bombshell today? Because that just came way out of nowhere.
It did, yeah. There's been, obviously, that happened a little bit earlier today. There has been a little bit more time for the media machine to do its job. Dana has come out and actually addressed the situation now. He's basically given an idea of what Conor's situation was, and the position he put the UFC in. So to me, in my personal opinion, when it comes down to it, the only change is the fact that Conor McGregor is not going to be at UFC 200. He did not say he retired. When it comes down to it, if you look at the tweet and actually read it word for word, he did not retire. He said he was retiring early. He's going to take his money, catch y'all later. But he actually didn't say
right. He just said he would retire young, or retire young, which could be 2 years from now, because I think he's only 27 or 28. So I mean, he could still retire at 29, 30, which is very young. And but yeah, the media definitely.
I think this was very intentional. I think this was an intentional move by Conor. He already knew that he was not showing up for the press conference for UFC 200. That was the situation that Dana addressed. He said, Conor, he's in Iceland. He is training. He would not come to the U.S. for the press conference for UFC 200. So we pulled him from the fight. And now we're trying to rework a fight and make things happen. Nick Diaz did fly in with his team, and everything was being set up for him to still fight. So that's the direction they were going in for Nick. They pulled Conor, and then we see this tweet. So I think this was a very intentional thing by Conor. What's one of the main things we like? Saying that I imply that I like this, which I don't. What's one of the things that a lot of people like about Conor?
Yeah.
He's a hype machine. That's what the UFC loves about him. He creates media. He creates talk. He creates interest and conflict. So that's exactly what he did with this tweet. The internet has pretty much crapped its pants. And he, even though, what's the news? Conor's off of UFC 200. That's the change, but the overriding issue that has come up, is Conor retiring. He's trying to stay relevant when it comes to an event that he no longer has anything to do with.
You don't think?
So it's actually a really smart media move.
Do you think he's trying to, he wanted to avoid Diaz? Fighting Diaz, or?
That I don't know if I necessarily agree with. I truly don't think that he would ever try to avoid anybody. I think he's the type of guy, he believes his own hype. I think if you gave him Robbie Lawler, he would step in the cage with Robbie Lawler. So, and he would get absolutely demolished, and I would absolutely love to see that. That said, that being neither here nor there, I think that he's in a very, very good position in his career. He has been able to go out and experiment a little bit, and really it hasn't done any damage to him because he was fighting in different weight classes. So it really didn't come back to bite him at all. He's able to play around in these other weight classes, and if you have the opportunity to make a boatload of money and have it not really affect your championship belt, your position within the pound for pound rankings, I don't think it did. I'm going to double check that real quick, see where he is on the UFC rankings. But if you're able to, Conor is currently 8th. I think he was higher, actually. So it might have affected his pound for pound list, but it didn't affect his position within his main division. So, no, I don't think that he was necessarily trying to duck Nick Diaz at all. Now, why he would refuse to leave Iceland to come for the press conference, especially when everybody has the same amount of time, everybody else on the card is showing up. why would he not?
How does this overall hurt the card, though?
I think
because he definitely was a main attraction for the UFC 200s.
Yeah, he's always, obviously, regardless of what card he is going to be on, he's going to be a main draw. He's going to be a main or co-main event. The card itself is amazingly stacked. As of right now, the first fight of the night is Cat Zingano against Juliana Pena. Now, granted, the list of these of the fight on the card that have been announced as of right now, they're not necessarily in order, but as they are right now, you have Cat Zingano, Juliana Pena, Takanori Gomi versus Jim Miller, Sage Northcutt. Obviously, he's part of the hype train now. Diego Sanchez, Joe Lozon. Lozon, always a crowd favorite, very exciting. Gegard Mousasi, Derek Brunson. So that's probably your prelim main event right there. Then your 5 fights on the main card. Johnny Hendricks, Kelvin Gastelum, Kane Vladimir, Travis Brown, Misha Tate, Amanda Nunes, Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, Nate Diaz. Excuse me, I was saying Nick Diaz earlier, wasn't I? Nate Diaz went in for the press conference with his team. Nate Diaz versus that bad dude we all know as TBA. Always watch out for TBA. So it is an incredibly stacked card, much like the UFC on Fox 19 was this past weekend. We are still, this fight is July 9th. This is International Fight Week. Plenty of time for this to get fouled up even further.
And that always seems the case with the UFC. Every time there's a big card planned and scheduled, a fighter drops out the day of or the day before, and it seems like Dana White always has kind of a scramble. Actually, we'll use that as a good segue, speaking of changing the main event, because we have the UFC coming up this weekend, 197. Initially, since the headliner was John Jones versus Daniel Cormier. However, that has since changed. And you mentioned earlier John Jones will be facing off against OSP. So, yeah, man, I know we kind of touched on that last week, man, but like, has anything changed about the way you're feeling about this card?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're going from a fight, a main event that you're expecting to be pretty much a unification bout, and for all intents and purposes, it's a unification bout. Now you're going John Jones, who's still the number one pound for pound fighter right now, against a guy who's 11th in the division. So, or excuse me,
he's 6th. Yeah, I was looking at the rankings yesterday, but I was just I was looking at the rankings last night, but it's just funny the way he just
not to be a dick, but you're not even top 5 in your division, and you're fighting the number one pound for pound fighter in the UFC. This is a guy who lost in a unanimous decision to Ryan Bader in Bangor. Ryan Bader has fought John Jones before, has lost to John Jones before. That was a while ago. But again, I think that this is a cakewalk. I wish that we had seen Anthony Johnson in this fight. But again, I think last time we were on and we were talking about UFC, he had gone through oral surgery, so he obviously was not medically cleared. We still have a championship fight on this card, but it's in the flyweight division, so Demetrius Johnson is going to most likely successfully defend his belt. He has been almost as dominant as John Jones was when he was at the peak of everything before he had his out of the cage issues. So DJ is going to be fighting Henry Cejudo. Obviously, great pedigree. He is an Olympian, but we'll see how that does against somebody who hasn't lost in forever. Anthony Pettis, Edson Barboza. I think that actually could be a fight of the night right there. Lots of excitement from both fighters. Obviously, Pettis had the belt. Edson Barboza, I remember I watched him fight April 2 years ago, UFC on Fox 11 in Orlando. He was fairly handily beating Donald Cerrone in the first round, and actually that was a fight of the night. I think it was submission of the night for Cerrone, a come from behind win, but Barboza was doing very well against a very tough Cerrone. So that could be fight of the night right there. But you sort of lose it for the rest of the time. Not too much to talk about the rest of the card. I will say it is kind of interesting that you have Anthony and Sergio Pettis both on the same event. So that's kind of cool that the brothers are fighting. They've gone through camp together. But yeah, obviously losing Cormier does severely affect this card.
So I'm gonna go back to. I just got some props. So thank you for who gave me the props. Yeah. So let's go back to UFC Fight Night. I want to talk about the two female fights on the card. So as far as like Rose Namajunas, like just what are your thoughts after that fight, and just what yeah, man, what are you thinking, man? 'Cause you got that firsthand experience, man. You were live, you were there.
That was an awesome fight to see. Yeah, she did work. I don't know. There was a video going around of Pat Barry pumping her up.
I haven't seen that. No.
I don't know if you saw that.
I'll have to check that out.
If you can, definitely look that up, because that is it hits you sort of right in the feels a little bit, but it's pretty motivating to say the least. That was a great fight to watch. It was 29-28 across the board for Rose. Really did a good job for herself within the division. Obviously, she was one of the upper echelon fighters already. She is third in the strawweight division. That was 3 versus 4. So I think she did some good for herself. Obviously, there's Joanna Jędrzejczyk as the champion. She's going to fight Claudia Gadelha at the end of Tough. That actually starts tomorrow. So is the first episode of Tough. Just a quick side note and plug for the Knockout, the MMA show I do, Knockout Radio. We will be having the winner from each week from the previous week. It sucks because we broadcast Wednesday nights, so we won't have that week's winner.
Right.
We'll have the previous week's winner. So they will be able to talk to us about what's going on up till that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Filming. So we've been doing that for some time now. So it's fun to keep on being a part of Tough in that sense. But we will, at the end of all of that, see Jędrzejczyk versus Gadelha. Obviously, a lot of conflict has been talked about. They had been friends, I guess, at one point in time, but now through filming, they're at each other's throats. But once we see the winner of that fight, I think that there's a good chance that Rose gets that title shot next.
Speaking of title shots, and I want to talk about Paige Correa. Even though she didn't get a title shot, however, prior to UFC Fight Night, her last fight was lost in a title fight against Ronda Rousey. Yeah, man. So how do you feel about Paige Correa, man? Because
I thought it was a little bit interesting, just to give a little bit of background on the MMA scene here in Florida. One thing that we saw in Orlando there's a lot of Portuguese. There's a lot of Brazilians in Florida and Central Florida. So you saw a lot of Brazilian flags. You saw a lot of Brazilian fans. You heard a lot of chants "Uvai Morer" in the stands. For those who don't speak Portuguese, that means you're going to die.
Wait, am I supposed to laugh at that?
So, well, it's kind of funny, although it's actually kind of intimidating when you hear the entire stadium yelling at you.
Like Ronda Rousey probably heard that when she fought against Kohei. I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you heard a lot of that in Orlando. Not the case this time. Pennington, who fights out of Colorado Springs, actually had a very strong following there. A lot of chants of USA, USA. And it was a very hard fought fight for both of them. That was a split decision. To me, it was I had scored 29-28 Pennington personally. She had done very, very well with her striking, landed a lot of good shots, and I think she pretty much outpointed her. So outpointed Betch. So good fight, but I did have it going Pennington's way anyway. When you look at the women's bantamweight, Pennington moved up 3 spots. Betch Kahea moved down 3 spots. So Pennington is now 9th and Betch is now 11th. So Betch has taken some significant hits.
2 straight fights now that she's lost after getting off to a 9-0 start to her UFC. All right.
Yeah, and so she did get that title shot, and so she is now outside of the top 10 in 2 quick fights. So, again, when you're talking about the bantamweight division, where Rousey is at 2, Holm is 1, Miesha Tate is the champ right now.
And Amanda Nunes.
You have Amanda Nunes, and then Kat Zingano is fighting at 200. We'll see how that goes. But really, you're talking about rotating through 3 people as of right now. Everybody else has been pretty much absolutely through. Same thing with the flyweight division. Same thing with light heavy. So there's a very obvious, significant difference in talent. So it's going to be interesting, especially in the upcoming events, to see how the younger fighters, either from Tough or from Invicta or other organizations that are being brought in, how much of a difference they're going to be. Because right now, with some of these divisions, they're just head and shoulders above everybody else.
So we've talked about UFC 200. We talked about Conor McGregor and a little bit about UFC 197 coming up. How was your overall experience just at the UFC fight night? Just having that kind of, just being around the fighters and that atmosphere. How exciting was that for you?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a little bit different for me. I have been to other events, again, when I've attended them in a working capacity. It's been Orlando. I did spend a little bit of time up at the one in Atlanta, where it was Jones Evans as the main event. So it was a little bit different because this was hometown. I didn't have to stay in a hotel or sleep on a friend's floor, something along those lines. I was able to play in a charity golf tournament that morning and then drive up and go to the media dinner before we went and saw the event. So it was pretty cool in that way, and especially the sense of sort of Tampa pride that you got, because you got to see a new group of people, a new crop, if you will, with MMA fans, as opposed to people there for a Tampa Bay Lightning game or a concert or something like that. You saw a new group in there in a facility that I'm very familiar with. So it was a lot of fun and great experience. Got to meet some cool people. Obviously, got to talk to a decent amount of fighters. I have to say my favorite thing was actually the last Wednesday, from the live broadcast. We had Cub Swanson, Gian Herrera, who's a local product who's now in the UFC. We've actually had him on Knockout Radio many times. We've actually been friends with him since his second pro fight. So we've known him for a while, and it's cool seeing a local kid make good and move up to the ranks. He actually announced today that the UFC called him today, so hopefully we'll be able to break some news on Knockout Radio. We usually get first dibs. So there's that. Just want to throw that out there. And then we also had Michael Chiesa, who is a tough winner. He actually kind of an interesting situation when they filmed his season. His father passed away early on in the series, and they had 100% said, "Hey, we will get you on another season. Go home, take care of things." He said, "No, I'll stay," and then he ended up winning the whole thing. So, very, very touching for me, and so it was great meeting him and talking with him and getting to meet him. And then he ends up getting fight of the night. So he's actually in 9 UFC fights. He has 5 of the night performances, and he's 7-2 now. So big name that's coming up. So it was great to see him. Both he and Cub won and did well. So it was very cool rubbing.
Yeah, when you're walking around like actual UFC fight night, is there anyone that's kind of like caught your eye, like, oh man, that's so and so, whether it was a writer or a fighter that you hadn't really met before?
Well, I think whenever you go to an event, Ariel Helwani draws attention. So I actually got to see. I didn't talk to him or get a chance to introduce myself, but he was in the media room when we first walked in to grab some food. He and his team were already sitting down and talking and discussing stuff. So got to see him. Let's see. Anybody else in particular? I think he's probably the one that really sort of I had not seen yet or been around. So
he's got. I like watching going watch some of his YouTubes or whatever video podcast or whatever show that he hosts on the side. He talked to Paul Heyman. I don't know if you're pretty familiar with like pro wrestling at all.
He was Brock Lesnar's.
But it was just it was a pretty long interview, but it was good stuff and just them talking, and of course Paul Heyman talked about Brock Lesnar, so it was good stuff. So
sure.
Do you think UFC is ever going to come to Hawaii in the near future, or will they come to Hawaii in the near future?
Will they go to Hawaii?
If not, man, if they do, you don't have to worry about sleeping on a friend's floor, man. I got a spare bedroom for you, and we both can walk around.
That's awesome. Sign me up. Yeah, I just have to pay for the ticket, right? That whole deal. Will they go to Hawaii? You know, to me, that would be a great send off for BJ Penn if they had. If they put something together and they put him on a card. I know that he had been put on the. Let me look something up real quick. He'd been, I think it was 198. He was fighting Dennis Seaver in his comeback fight. He is not on 198. Was it 199? Let's see real quick. BJ Penn versus Dennis Seaver, featherweight. So, Big Guida also on that card. Actually, that's going to be a pretty good one, I think. Inglewood, at the Forum in Inglewood, California, June 4th. That's the Rockhold Weidman as well as Cruz Faber card. I think if they had been able to do a fight in Hawaii, that would have been a good going away for him. I personally think that while BJ Penn, big name, Hall of Famer, of course, he actually is doing damage to his legacy because he's been really, really doing poorly. And he fights, he retires, he gets a wild hair, and then he wants to fight again. He fights, he loses, he retires until he gets a wild hair. And that's exactly what has happened up to this point. He's lost his last 3. The one before that was a draw. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 losses in his last 7 fights. He's won 1 win, 1 draw, and 5 losses. That's the time where it's the complete opposite of Rashad. Rashad, yes, no, maybe so. BJ Penn is in a situation where, yes, you should stay retired. Just saying. But yeah, I think Hawaii would be, as long as it's financially smart for them to do so, I'd say Hawaii would be a good
cool.
place to
well,
go.
Let's end on that note, man. And that'd be awesome for me because I would love to attend that, and I think that'd be pretty cool. So, yeah, man, I got my Air Force, I got my PT test tomorrow, so I need to eat a light dinner and get some drink lots of water and get plenty of rest,
Absolutely.
man. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. If you want more, you can always like our Facebook page, AIM Sports with Alex and Martin. You can follow us on Twitter at AIM Sports Guys. Check out our website, aimsportsguys.com. And as always, you can also go to YouTube. Just search for AIM Sports with Alex and Martin. You can watch all of our videos and subscribe to our channel. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.
Night.